If you desire, you can become one of our bunch. Wings.
That literally looks like Bloom's skirt, doesn't it? Winx Club, a show that I grew up on, a show that is basically the reason why I like bright colors, bell-bottom jeans, and glitter. I did not actually realize how much the show influenced my fashion taste until I rewatched it as an adult for this video, but now that I connected the dots, it is clear that I'm going to reference this show as the inspiration for a lot of things that I do for as long as I live. Give credit where credit is due, right? I believe that I am qualified to do this review because I'm good at these things. And because about 15 years ago, at the age of 10 or so, I used to make money on the blog website, making GIFs and headers and other stuff like that of Winx for other blog users. The website is probably not gonna be familiar to you because it was a Russian website and this video is in English. So most of the people watching this are not gonna be familiar with that website at all. It doesn't really matter. What matters is the fact that even 15 years later, I am still making money talking about Winx online. Not much has changed. I just moved on the other side of the world, got a degree, and got cancer. So let me explain the structure of my review videos, and this video in particular. Winx Club has 8 seasons, but today we're going to be talking about seasons 1 through 4. By the way, season 4 is going to be separate in this video, since those seasons have similar uniform art direction to them. And in the part 2, in a separate video, I'm going to cover seasons 5 through 8. In my reviews, I like to separate points into categories. First category being art direction, big decisions in setting, style, and other visual aspects, as well as music, basically anything that affects the overall feel and mood of the entirety of the show. Second being writing, third design, specifically looking into objects in detail, and fourth is world building. Of course, some points can be put in more than one category, but I decide where they belong based on the specific show that I'm reviewing, and I like to introduce ideas when they naturally come about and then flesh them out a bit more in the appropriate section. So let's start with I like to mix pros and cons when talking about shows, and we're gonna start with a pro, which is animation style and innovation. I know that there's a bunch of different people with a bunch of different opinions on Winx animation. This show has a lot of small animation mistakes, like this time where instead of Bloom, there was a random fairy in her bed. Also, Winx animation is a blend between 2D and 3D animation, and I'm gonna go ahead and say that it was genius and it led to a lot of pros. I know it wasn't always perfect, but I think that I really appreciate it nowadays, the way that it's been done, because it was done in like 2003 or something like that, before it was released obviously in 2004. I tried to find out if Winx was the definitively first animation show to do this type of blending of 2D and 3D animation on such a consistent base, but I couldn't find anything to, definitely prove it, so I'm just gonna say that it's one of the first ones. It's one of the first ones. Yeah, there are a few moments here and there where the blending of the two styles doesn't really work that well, like in this infamous moment. But it also leads to a lot of incredible fight scenes, like this fight between Bloom and Icy. This 3D map looks fantastic behind them, allowing the animators to focus on choreographing the fight to be impactful and memorable, which it certainly is. That is another pro, by the way. Fight choreographies really shine in this show. They are surprisingly never boring, which is hard to achieve when you're making a show that avoids blood and other unsightly things that many other animations have at their disposal to raise the stakes. Just in that one fight between Icy and Bloom, Icy grabs Bloom with the hand that she made out of the lake's water, pulls her under, then freezes her under the lake's surface, just for Bloom to crack it wide open and then use her dragon flame to crush the ice that she was trapped in a few seconds later. They throw each other around while the fight is intercut with a battle of fairies, witches, and specialists with the disgusting self-healing army of squirmy worm creatures, and a fight between in the rest of the Winx and tricks, which also employs a lot of great visually interesting attacks like Stormy's massive electric storm or tornado, and Muse's sound waves and speakers. Choreography in fight scenes is incredibly important and hard to make entertaining if there are any mistakes in the planning or execution, and Winx really excels at making those fights engaging. There are a lot of great moments like Feragonda throwing Valtor through the trees after he literally sweeps her off of her feet and crushes her into the ground hundreds of meters away from where they were. Or this moment when Winx used the convergence spell in a way that actually makes a lot of sense, which is an episode where they created a creature that had to fight for them. Also this attack by Flora, which could have been a great spell to adapt into a live action because it could look so gnarly in a show that has less censoring. This is basically her returning something to nature. This is a spell that basically makes something rot and decompose and go back to earth. I think that this would have been a great attack for live action if you wanted to really turn it up, and this is the creative way to make it interesting, you know, to make real Winx pull from the actual show, from the original show, and make something a little bit less censored with it. I like that a lot of the magic in the show, a lot of the blasts that they're creating and stuff like that looks a little bit different than the rest of the Tron show. It's still a 2D effect, but it's a particle effect basically, and I think that it looks really pretty in my opinion. I like the way that it looks. Their attacks are always stunning. Like there's something about this blast, like even if it's just a simple blast, it's still satisfying to watch. Also Wind Rider competitions or scenes where they have to speed and stuff like that, they're really engaging, mostly because 3D animation is used with 2D animation and it allows for experimentation and interesting angles, especially when they're placed in environments that were also 3D generated, like Cloud Tower for example. I really like whenever they were around the Cloud Tower area or climbing around the Cloud Tower on their Wind Riders. That was really interesting visually. Basically cool how they were switching back and forth between 2D and 3D, and it kind of worked together as the same way as magic and technology works in this world. It kind of felt like they were stepping into this more innovative approach to animation too. That leads me to powers that Winx have and the way that they're portrayed in the show. I think the way that magic works in the Winx world is really interesting. Each one of the fairies have their own source of power, so they're fairies of something specific, which is a power setup that's quite unique to this show and this universe, especially considering just how popular elemental powers are in magic shows or books. More often you just get general magical powers that everyone has the same source of them, or it is sourced by evil or good as a concept, and I like that they have more specific origins of their powers. So Techne is a fairy of technology, Stella is the fairy of sun and moon, Bloom is a fairy of the dragon fire. In Winx lore, the dragon has created the world, the universe, so it's kind of having the power of the flame of life. Flora is a fairy of nature, and Muse is the fairy of music. Later in season 2, we are introduced to the sixth Winx, who is Aisha, or Layla, depending on which translation you were watching, and she's a fairy of waves. More notably, a magical fluid named Morphix that she has created, which can take shape of anything that Aisha wants it to. Now, even though they have sources of power, every fairy can also learn spells. So they're not just limited to their natural powers or powers associated with their sources. This is the part that makes the first few seasons of Winx so memorable. They don't get easy and boring solutions to their problems because the sources of magic that they possess have limits, and to be stronger they actually have to learn how to solve different problems, which sometimes includes learning spells, sometimes creative cooperation, and sometimes it involves some introspection or connection to your surroundings to get that kind of new insight. For example, that moment from season 2 that I brought up earlier, where Winx learned how to use their convergence magic. They had to actually actively collaborate to create a creature they can physically fight for them, because their opponent was indestructible with direct magic. So they create a creature by using Aisha's Morphix as the base, Flora's vines as a sort of skeleton, or rather something to strengthen the joints, Stella's powers to give it sight, Muse's to give it voice, Technus to give it an operating system or a brain, and Bloom's powers to give it a will to live and to fight. Another example of that would be in the first season, where Winx had to complete a test by listening to their natural environment rather than using magic powers. This setup leads to a lot of great slice of life content, with the characters really showcasing how good of a dynamic they have together when it comes to line delivery and rapport.
Get back to your assignment and don't worry about a thing. Leave it to the specialists.
The specialists are gonna be here? When?
More on that in the writing section. One of my favorite moments that showcases this creative, logical, magic problem solving is training or sparring in season 3, episode 21, where the Winx attack Bloom one by one because they realize that since both Valtor and Bloom have the same source of magic, if they beat her, they can figure out a way to beat him. They eventually find a way to beat Valtor, but it comes from another way that they were trying to solve this problem, which was research. This scene and many others in the show off the animation and design choices for their attacks and magic really well. The sequence really shows what I mean by creative problem solving that makes logical sense. Watching them figure out these problems was satisfying, since the setup they're dealing with and the execution make a lot of sense. Since we're on the topic of magic powers, I want to talk more about them and their design. We know that this show really knows how to make a fight good, and that includes interesting, unique to each fairy attacks. I'll just mention some of my favorite attacks or use of magic in these seasons. I loved, and I mean loved, Musa's barrier that she created by playing the flute in season 1, episode 20. I wish Musa used the flute or other instruments a little bit more because that was fantastic. That was so fun, and I think that it works so well for her. Flora's ability to find out what happened or where someone went by communicating to the plants that are in the area. Fantastic. It happened a couple of times in the show and I loved both. It's such a unique ability. I also love that most of Flora's attacks are kind of the opposite of Bloom. Bloom is very straightforward and uses brute force, while Flora always finds a way to either restrict or incapacitate the opponent by surrounding them. In the same episode with the Muse's flute attack, she makes the flowers eat monsters around them, and this is probably the most aggressive attack I've seen from Flora, except for the Return to Nature one. I love Technus wings in her base form. The fact that they are laser wings is already cool, but the fact that it changes into a hand glider without the hang thing, just the glider part. Girl, that's such a good idea for her character. I love it. It's not an attack though, so I gotta mention an attack, and it would be Compublast. Once again, it's from the same moment in the show, the same episode, the same fight. It's just they gave us so many great attacks within like 10 minutes that we gotta talk about them because they were great. So the Compublast one is an attack where she uses chips and then she detonates them, and it's just really destructive and cool. I love it. I also love when Stella uses teleportation in battle. I think that that's really cool. Unfortunately, we don't really get to see it that often. I believe that she might have used it a couple of times in the first season and that was it, but I wish that she would use it more. It was so great, also unique to her, the fact that she can teleport. No one else can do it easily, and I love this individualization of their powers. Also, it's not really an attack either, but I really liked when Aisha used her Morphix to create a pulley machine in episode 4, season 2. I also loved when she used the Morphix surfboard. Every time she used it, I absolutely loved it. All of these are so fun. Truly great use of their magic powers. I wish we got more of that in later seasons, but we'll talk about it later. Let's cover a con real quick to mix it up a little. This con is technically a design issue, but it affects every single character, or almost every single character. So I have to mention it here in the big art direction decisions. So the problem is unrealistic body proportions and their uniformity. This is an issue that a lot of people have with this show, so I have to bring this up. I personally don't feel that strongly about it, just because I never looked at cartoons as something to compare myself to, because it's a cartoon, it's a drawing. So as a kid, I never saw myself as different to Winx because I thought, oh, it's a cartoon. It's not real proportions, obviously. However, I do get the point that people are making about the proportions. All the girls are extremely thin and have an hourglass figure. The proportions in terms of the lengths of legs and everything, it's all off. It's absolutely off. All or most of the guys are extremely ripped and have massive shoulders and tiny waists. I think this design can be problematic if as a child you compared yourself to these characters. I don't have a personal opinion on that in that sense just because I didn't personally compare myself to them when I was watching it. I will say that the design did come from exaggerated fashion sketches that usually have ridiculously unrealistic proportions. And this uniformity of design is quite common in cartoons, especially animations that try to encourage more people to design their own versions of outfits or transformations and post them online. It is a common strategy to create a body that is used for everyone in a show. Like, for example, My Little Pony have kind of the same approach to animation. If you learn how to draw one pony, you can draw them all. That encourages fan art and adaptation of this drawing style in the fan community. So I agree that the proportions are not realistic. Definitely they aren't. And they are uniform. There is an explanation for everything, but it's kind of up to debate, to be honest. Let me know if you think differently. Let me know how you feel about it, because I definitely don't have a strong opinion on it just because it did not affect me. But I'm curious to hear if that affected you, especially if you were an audience member. If you were somebody else who never watched it, never liked it, I don't care for your opinion. But if you were one of the Winx fans, tell me if that has affected you in negative ways in any kind of manner. Another thing is that the designs were considered to be too revealing and too sexy, which I mean, they kind of are, but I don't see it as provocative or meant to be arousing. I do tend to not see things sexually in general, but I just don't think I agree with that point in terms of it being intentional. I think it was more focused on the fashion and just designs for the girls, the things that we enjoy instead of what people who are attracted to women enjoy. Like, yeah, the skirts are short, but they're never posed in a sexualized way. It's just a really cute, stylish skirt to me. Yeah, the Enchantix outfits are kind of bathing suits. Like, so what? Are bathing suits not allowed anymore? They're such cute outfits. This is a girl's world where none of these designs were meant to be seen through that sexualized lens. These outfits are just super cute, sparkly, and are just a dream come true. I've seen a lot of animations where the way that the characters were posed or the way that they were treated through the lens of the creators, you could definitely tell that it was made for the male gaze, and I don't think that it's the case for Winx, to be honest. Can everyone stop ruining everything with their weird ass sexualization? The outfits are cool, and that's what's important about that. On the other hand, this show does have an ethnically diverse main cast, which was rare at the time. I think that even if you were not paying attention to it that much when you were little, you definitely pay attention to it now as an adult and appreciate that about the Winx girls and their impact in terms of representation. On the note of characters and world, I just love the aesthetic that the Winx world has. We will go into specific design and all the reasons as to why I like them in the design section. But I just want to mention it in the overall art direction section because I like what all of these aspects, both design and world building, plus camera direction and or storyboarding, bring to the show. It just has an aesthetic like no other. It's so fun and colorful while at the same time not shying away from dark and gothic looking locations and styles as well. I like that we get both fairies and witches, and that after season 1, this whole pretense about witches being the ultimate bad is dropped in favor of showing that witches just draw their powers from different sources and that they are not necessarily evil. The magic dimension is so different from what you would expect. Bloom herself comments on that when she sees the City of Magics for the first time. It is highly futuristic and modern, offering hovering cars and gadgets out of sci-fi movies, while oftentimes being powered entirely by magic. It is a fascinating combination of aesthetics, especially for the Althea School for Fairies, because most of the time we get something like Hogwarts or something entirely futuristic when it comes to institutions. But in Winx you get both at the same time. Another unique aspect of the mood and tone of the magic dimension is the amount of realms and their diversity. It is commonplace to get a witches and castles aesthetic or laser sword wielding hunks in spaceships aesthetic. But having both and it being hyper feminine at the same time, mostly because the story is told from a perspective of a group of girls. It is rare and so fun. I honestly cannot believe that fate the Winx saga didn't sink their teeth into this aesthetic and run with it, because this type of style doesn't come by very often, and squandering it by making it a generic castle school with drab colors and no technology is just criminal. Now on to another pro that's related to magic powers and all that, is transformations and transformation sequences. I am a sucker for magic girl shows. I am. This is such an exciting part of any show with transformations for me. Best part of any episode, and Winx had one of the best designs around. More on that later. Because not only did the transformations reflect their powers, they were also extremely stylish and beautiful, and they were individual to each one of the girls, having some subtle similarities or criteria to fit that transformation level. Not only that, but Winx had noticeable power-ups that made a lot of sense. Charmix was just a bit of a boost to their powers. So we just included a couple of accessories to signify that they're stronger, that they're using a new transformation sequence. Enchantix, on the other hand, was introduced as the final fairy form that can be achieved by sacrificing yourself or showing great amount of bravery to save one of the people of your world or realm. So, because it's a final fairy form, it introduced a redesign of the outfits that incorporated the new powers that they were getting as full-fledged fairies. Each fairy gets to have big, powerful wings that can keep up with aircrafts. The wings also have little trinkets on them that play into the whole fairy dust aspect of this transformation. The fairy dust is also represented by the individual bottles, and whenever they use them, they get this whole animation sequence. And this is exactly what I want to emphasize. The fun animation sequences for the transformation, and the fact that each one of the wings get the same attention and a unique transformation as Bloom, who is the main character of the series. If you compare that to series like Sailor Moon, where Sailor Moon gets a longer and more impressive transformation sequence, as well as more noticeable power-ups and redesigns, Winx all get to do their thing, instead of one character getting all the attention and everyone else being left in the dust. Not necessarily in terms of screen time, but still. I want to talk about the individualization of the transformations a bit more, starting with the animation sequences for Magic Winx, or for any fairy. What I like about them most is that each girl gets her own choreography. That is interesting to watch because of how dynamic it is, and how well it fits their personalities, as well as details in the animations like effects of transformations correlating with the girl's powers. Bloom has flames spreading wherever the outfit is appearing. Techna has a green net forming the pieces. Musa has a disco ball-like squares. Flora has petals, and Stella has light. When the main characters get their Enchantix, it is a moment. First of all, it takes 2 seasons and 6 episodes of the 3rd season for us to arrive at the first Enchantix transformation, which is Aisha's. So Enchantix felt like a big deal. The episodes were well written. We'll talk about it in the writing section soon. So these transformations had a great story to build on when they appeared on the screen with the music that fits perfectly. These transformations really had impact. Speaking of music, the music in the show is hit or miss. When it hits, it really hits. The opening song, Enchantix song, Magic Winx song are all fantastic. Enchantix still makes my heart have a little moment. But when I was a kid, that was such an exciting point in any episode, especially those episodes where Winx members would earn their Enchantix, because that song would soar in such dramatic moments that worked so well together. It was absolutely fantastic. But there's also songs like a Princess, which I don't like, just don't vibe with it. And you know, it happens sometimes. It's not a big deal. It's up to your preferences. And just Enchantix song alone makes up for any other song that doesn't work. Musa's song about her mother, by the way, is a song that made me cry as a kid. And I still remember that episode because of how well written it is and how beautiful that song is. Also, I wrote down a note that literally says, what if Winx had Brat's music? Because if you're not familiar, the Bratz show and the movies have really great soundtracks, have really great music. It has both R&B and pop rock music that I think would work really great for Winx parties and would be a great replacement for songs that don't really work that well. Basically, it would just be really fun, I think. So let's talk about some interesting directing choices. By directing, I mean storyboarding or camera directing. This is a point that best described by just showing examples. For example, Brandon's head hitting the camera, running away from the creature in episode 8, Musa in the jaws of the creature in episode 12, the opening in episode 16. Just remember these examples for the part 2 that's gonna come at some point about season 5 to 8, because we're gonna need those examples to compare and contrast. I think the reason for these interesting shots is the fact that these seasons were animated with the old techniques when it comes to 2D animation. If you're gonna be drawing things frame by frame, you're definitely gonna put a lot of effort into storyboarding and directing of the shots because it's the same amount of work in terms of manual work. Later seasons have pretty shots, but they are heavily relying on the standard effects that save up a lot of time and money that are used in animation today. So the shots are not the original. Basically, the art direction of this show is unique and full of life when it comes to tone, mood, and color palettes. This show is unmatched in its diversity while still having this unique unifying quality that is a sign of masterful visual world craftsmanship. It's great. Let's start with a massive pro, shall we? Excellent story arc for the 3 seasons together. Tell me why this show makes more sense than many shows that are aimed at an adult, older demographic. I was genuinely impressed by the story progression and the sophistication of plot lines being interwoven together. Season 1 does a great job at building tension to those final battle episodes, while at the same time developing the world around the Winx girls. Just in the first few episodes, we are introduced to Gardenia, Althea School, Magic City, Cloud Tower School for Witches, and Red Fountain School for Specialists. The plot is never stretched out for no reason, even though the first season is like 25 episodes long, 26 minus 1, if you know, you know. Whenever we don't get much development in the main story of Bloom's past, we get great slice of life content that fleshes out the world around them and shows off their great chemistry. The final battle in season 1 works really well and serves as the perfect climax to the story. Season 2, oh my god, season 2. This season delivers on character development like no other. This is a season of great slice of life episodes that are so dynamic and full of life. Just like Halloween's episode 16. You get a party episode that's full of great moments like Aisha telling you off a creep.
Yes, well, Doctor, you're the one making me feel queasy.
Flora saying that people at this party suck ass because they're so antisocial and boring.
Oh, Mitzi's friends are very boring. They're also antisocial.
And Stella insulting Mitzi, as she should.
I see. She does have a maggot face.
Some of the standouts in the writing department are episodes like episode 15, Show Must Go On. This is a great example of what season 2 offers. It shows Musa's backstory and how it affects her current life. Musa's mother died a long time ago, and the episode shows how that kind of loss can affect people and their life decisions with their family. Great episode. The whole Princess of Mensha storyline is this season, which is a storyline that really fleshes out Stella's and Brendan's relationship and makes them really likable. Basically, season 2 does a lot for the characters and their likability. Season 3 is, oh my god, it's so good. The writing shows so much foresight that many shows for adults don't. Everything makes so much sense and so many storylines are introduced at a perfect time to have them properly develop and sit with the audience before their resolution. Just to give you an idea of how well set up this season is. In the first episode, we follow girls to Magic's, where they're shopping for Stella's princess ball. We are introduced to a new character, Chimera, and she's like a little bitch or whatever. And through that interaction, we are given a clue that somehow Chimera is related to Stella's royal court. And for some reason, she is convinced that she is the one who is going to become a princess there. It is suggested, not explicitly talked out between Stella and Chimera, but it is clear that there's trouble coming Stella's way. Immediately after that, there is a massive disturbance in the ocean that causes a tsunami, and Aisha leaves through the ocean to get to her home planet Andros, the planet planet of oceans, because there's definitely something wrong there if the wave has reached all the way to Magic City. It is also clear that that disturbance on Andros is connected to the fact that the villains of this season have escaped through the portal that is situated on Andros. We see Stella's story develop through the entire season and get resolved in episode 19. Aisha's problem that fleshes out her world is not solved until episode 13, but it's arguable because I don't know if it was entirely resolved at that point, since Valtor really did a number on Andros. And obviously the villains don't get defeated until the last episode, but what's important is that Stella's subplot is just that, a subplot, but it is also well developed and executed, that I was genuinely surprised to see that I was right to like this show as a kid. It deserved the praise and attention that it got. Another pro that relates to the structure of the show is the age range and setup for the show. When the story starts, most of the Winx Club girls are 16, Stella is 17, and in the second episode of the series, it is established that it takes 5 years to graduate from Althea. The setup is not super unique, but it is effective and gives more room for the characters to grow and have interesting storylines. Since after just a season or two they're going to be 18, and studying at Althea is more like going to university rather than high school. It is quite unfortunate for the writers of the next few seasons of Winx that for some reason, this setup was axed and made impossible after 3 years in the movie that follows the 3 seasons and precedes season 4. This is actually one of the problems that the movie presents that affect every season going forward, and this point is going to come up multiple times in this review series, so set this info aside for later. A con: these storylines are genuinely good, but what makes them less appealing to a wider audience is the natural vagueness when the material is censored. This censorship makes motivations of characters a little bit confusing at times, or seem underdeveloped. So scenes can become a little bit awkward in the writing department. For example, a lot of relationships suffer from this. Take Musa and Ribbon. They are constantly fighting, and it's actually hard to tell when they start dating, as well as why they even fight from time to time. Take a look at this.
Hey, what do you think of my hat?
Yeah, it looks cool.
It looks cool? That's all you can say about it, is it?
It looks warm.
Why do you say that?
Isn't it supposed to be warm?
Ugh, you're unbelievable.
Okay, so what the hell was that? What was the fight about? I was so confused that I thought that maybe it's a translation issue. So I looked this scene up in a different language, but they literally said the same thing there too. So it's a scene of them just fighting over this vague reason that doesn't quite make sense. Another thing that affects the impact of the show is line delivery and writing rhythm that sometimes is a bit awkward. I don't know where the issue originated in line delivery. It's hard to tell with animation. It's strange because it's not consistently bad. I will get back to good examples soon, but it is remarkable how off the rhythm and choreography of this scene can be, and just how effective and well executed some other scenes are. Basically, it's not a constant issue, but it is present, and it is there sometimes because they had to cut down on the explicit or more specific content, and sometimes it seems like it was more of a production issue. Another pro, and a massive one at that, is Aisha. Winx Club is one of the few shows that featured a new main group member joining the cast a whole season later. That becomes a great addition to the group. Obviously it happened in other media before, but I want you to pay attention to this character because she's so well written, arguably the best written character in Winx Club. Aisha really showed that Winx is not run-of-the-mill type of show. Second season, I'm telling you. Her storyline really showed that the girls in the group are not interchangeable, and that they're not a perfect but soulless group of random characters. Aisha struggles to feel like part of the group, while at the same time it is shown that she becomes friends with Musa first, and then slowly becomes closer to other girls, while there is still tension and disconnect between all of the characters, not just Aisha and the Winx. Aisha's introduction coincides with the Winx being unable to use convergence magics when they need to because of their lack of teamwork and understanding of themselves and one another, which ties into the development of them as characters and their achievement of Charmix transformation. There is literally a whole episode showing the cracks in the group that are there because of how different they all are, and that each of them naturally gravitate towards some Winx members while finding some of the other girls hard to understand or get along with. A con: I call this one heteronormativity to the max.
You guys okay?
Isn't it rather obvious?
And let me explain, I'm not gonna lie, I don't have high expectations for this type of inclusivity in a 2004 kids show. But the way that the relationships are handled sometimes in this show is a bit ridiculous. They all conveniently fall for the guys from the Red Fountain, and they all conveniently fall for the guys that are on the same squad. None of the couples break up after being set up, except for Musa and Riven, but they're a whole complete different thing altogether. Just a side note, I wrote this so many times in my notes. Riven is so annoying.
Okay, I have a heart.
I guess I don't have a soft spot for bad boys. Anyway, I like Brendan and Stella a lot. That might be because those two get the most time on screen as a couple, and they get so much development. There is a great storyline with Princess Amencia in season 2.
No matter what happens, don't let go of my hand!
And another great storyline in season 3, where Stella is under a dark magic spell, and it turns out that Brandon can see what she actually looks like, even though she was very self-conscious about it. And he supports her through the whole experience, which shows that they have a deeper relationship than they used to. Also, look at Brandon just being hot. Love him. I also love how they have very open communication, and also how fun and flirty they are. Also, both of them just really love Sky.
It'll be my pleasure, lover boy.
Where do you think, hot stuff?
Over there, she's waiting for you. Go for it.
Another couple that's really fun is Aisha and Naboo, but I do not like that he was kind of stalking them in the beginning. Like, what the hell, Naboo? Timmy and Tekna are cute, but one of the scenes between them shows a massive issue that I have with Tekna's development as a character, which is the fact that she and Flora doesn't get much time to show her world, her personality and interests outside of logic and technology. In this scene in season 2, episode 13, Tekna gets mad at Timmy for only talking about technology stuff with her and getting her a gift that's for her computer and not her, which is like, what do you like besides technology? She expects Timmy to know, but does anyone? Did we get much to go off of? The only pairing that is extremely confusing, because it is a kids show and there is censorship, is Riven and Musa. They get so many vague problems and they stick around each other for way too long, to be honest. I think they have a lot of potential as an example of a bad pairing or an kind of toxic relationship, but I wish their issues were more developed. Also, in season 3, Riven shows just how much of a selfish prick he is by putting his pride above Musa's well-being when he comes to the Red Tower and sees Naboo holding Musa, unconscious Musa by the way, and decides that it's more important to tell Naboo not to touch his girlfriend and fight him instead of helping Musa. And after that, Musa is like into that nonsense. It's really something. I also wish we got more moments between Specialists and Winx that were not between the couples exclusively. For example, if Tekna gets hit, it's not necessary to always write Timmy in as the one who reaches out to help or the one who reacts to her getting hit. There is a moment in the Omega Dimension where the group is reunited and everyone greets each other, and it is finally not about the couples interacting with each other exclusively. And I thought that was a great detail that should have been present a lot more often. These people went through so many life-threatening and regular life situations together that it only makes sense that they would become friends that care about one another. Basically, the convenience of all of them being in pairs is a bit much. Just a bit silly. This show is usually pretty good at having a good reason as to why something is happening, the way that it is happening. But here, the convenience of it all is just too much to not come off as a little bit silly. Also, another example of heteronormativity being too much is all the moments where the girls are like, boys, or boys, when being frustrated with them or being happy to see them. This generalization, a little weird. There is this scene in season 3, episode 19, where the guys talk about the girls, and it's just impossible to listen to.
Hey, give it back!
Looks like we've got our very own Shakespeare.
Well, Riven is the one who needs to wake up. You should stop being such a jerk, or you can count on losing Musa forever.
Until Helia steps in. Thank you, Helia. A pro. Great establishment of friendships,
Lover boy.
fantastic character chemistry or rapport, and jokes that land well because of that great chemistry. Winx works so much better than many other shows that implement this group of girls being friends setup. And it is because these characters have a colorful, really entertaining type of dynamic in the group. I wanted to talk about this in the first part of the review because unfortunately the rest of the seasons lose that dynamic entirely. The amount of times I wrote down a point in the show as a clip that I could use for this video because it was funny or well written for these characters is really high, a lot higher than you would think. What makes this dynamic unique is that they don't actually naturally get along as much as they choose to get along. It becomes apparent in 18th episode of season 2 in the heart of Cloud Tower, where the Winx are split up into pairs. They all happen to be paired up with someone they don't naturally get along with in the group, someone who is in one way or another their polar opposite. This unique situation shows that this group is not just full of people that are friends with each other for no reason. In general, this show manages to create bonds between characters that feel believable and real, with some of the relationships developing as the series goes on. I love that the girls' personal growth and challenges reflected in their interpersonal relationships. For example, Aisha and Musa's friendship helped to flesh out both of these characters, giving their interests a lot more weight than just pastime. By interest I mean Aisha's love for dancing and Musa's passion for music. These characters get annoyed at each other, but they also like spending time together. What makes their relationship work is the fact that they all have boundaries and they are all different. Basically, Winx as a cast are really effective at drawing the audience in. Another pro is Bloom's relationship with her adoptive parents. This is another thing I like about this show, the relationship between Bloom and her adoptive parents. When it is revealed that Bloom is adopted, the show handles the topic really well, in a way that shows that even though Bloom wants to know where she is originally from, she still thinks of Vanessa and Mike as her parents because they're the ones who raised her. This whole theme of adoption is approached in a really nice way. There are scenes where even though Bloom is upset about not knowing how she ended up in that fire as a baby, she is both supported in her quest to find out about her past and told that being adopted is a wonderful thing when your adoptive parents are like Vanessa and Mike. That is stated by the Winx girls when they're trying to console her. Bloom was never upset at her adoptive parents over finding out about the adoption, which is pretty unique for media of that time, when in most stories the characters that are adopted would always be angry at them. The show reiterates the importance of their relationship multiple times and shows that they don't stop being her parents when she finds out about her biological ones. And I think it's an important example to observe for kids in a show like this, the same way that it is important to show Musa's struggle and a form of peace with the death of her mother. A pro. Obstacles for Bloom make her more relatable and less overbearing, giving more room to the Winx to be useful and important to the overall picture. It is a great decision to make them all susceptible to being weak due to their environment or other factors, as well as giving unique abilities to everyone in the group, making it hard for the group to be as effective when separated. This quality of the first 4 seasons also gets lost in the later seasons, unfortunately, which leads to a lot, and I mean a lot, of issues with the plot. We will talk about all of those issues in depth in part 2. Right now, let me elaborate on how beneficial to the story these Bloom obstacles are. First of all, Bloom is terrible at using her magic when she first finds out about it, and is only powerful when she's in direct combat, while being just as likely or unlikely to succeed in school or in technical spells as the other fairies. Her inferiority complex that she develops due to her being unsure about her background is the reason for her losing her powers to the tricks. That plotline of her giving up and moving back to Gardenia showed just how naive and inexperienced she is. It also gave room to all the other Winx to show what they can do. They go to Domino with Bloom and get attacked. With Bloom's powers gone, she's basically just standing around while the rest of the Winx are showing what they're capable of. Bloom was actually unable to use her powers for like 7 episodes, and her being hasty and impulsive almost cost the well-being of the entire magic dimension. I think that the biggest obstacle that was extremely beneficial to the plot was in season 3, where Bloom realizes she's unable to get enchantix because it requires to save someone from your home realm, and everyone on Domino has disappeared a long time ago. This is the main reason why everyone else gets their enchantix first before Bloom, which gave plenty of opportunity for the Winx who got their powers first to be the most powerful in the group. Not only did they get to really shine then, but they also got to go on important missions without Bloom due to her Enchantix not being complete, which meant that she couldn't miniaturize. It's one of the perks of having an Enchantix. The fact that she forced herself to get an Enchantix made it unstable, so the rest of the group had better control of their powers and could use them at full force without worrying that they might hurt somebody they don't intend to, or spontaneously transform back into their human form. It is a great idea to limit Bloom's powers. Giving one person too much power in a group can lead to all the other characters to become set decorations that are unable to contribute in any meaningful way. This point is actually one of the main reasons why I don't think that Bloom is a Mary Sue. A Mary Sue is a term used to describe a fictional character, usually female, who is seen as too perfect and almost boring for lack of flaws. Based on this definition, I don't think that Bloom is a Mary Sue. She actually has a lot of flaws. She does become a Mary Sue in later seasons, so beware of that in the second part of this review. It's also important that the Winx have unique abilities that are hard to substitute. Stella can teleport people, for example. That is a unique power that cannot be easily replicated. And in season 3, when they require teleportation and Stella cannot come with them, they have to come up with a new way of doing that, which is something that Tecna figures out how to do, but with the help of technology. In the future seasons, storytelling and world-building start to suffer because of Winx being overpowered. So I want to point out that the first seasons do a fantastic job of limiting powers and giving unique abilities to everyone else in the group. A con, timeline issue. There's a big timeline issue that I really can't wrap my head around. So, 16 years ago, the Company of Light defeated the Ancestral Witches. Saladin, Griffin, and Farragonda look so much older than they did 16 years ago, even though they're not supposed to age that fast, since they're magical creatures. And it is a well-known fact, based on the other Althea staff, that witches, fairies, and sorcerers don't age as fast as regular humans. And even if they were human, they wouldn't age from roughly 18 to roughly 70 in like 16 years. Like, the math is not doing its thing here, alright? It makes no sense. Why does no one know who Daphne is if she was that hero who stopped the witches, who helped Bloom escape? I guess even if people didn't know that Bloom escaped, they would still know Daphne as the nymph that's painted on the Museum of Magics. I don't know, why don't anybody know who Daphne is, honestly? Why does no one remember Domino and not put two and two together that Bloom is from Domino? Just what? 16 years is not that long of a time. None of this makes sense because of the time issue. Everything would be explained if this plot hole wasn't there. Let's talk about villains. We get both good villains and meh villains in the first 3 seasons. However, when it comes to raising the stakes, Winx does a great job of making each villain feel as an appropriate opponent for the girls who get more and more experienced and powerful each time. I know that the first season had that epic battle going on, but I would argue that the stakes were going up gradually after that too. The most obvious example of that is the fact that everyone goes from fighting the Tricks and an army of worms that would transform into a bunch of monsters to fighting people that were transformed or corrupted by Valtor. It's a bit harder to fight when you know that the opponent is a person or another creature capable of thought versus fighting a bunch of shadow monsters that are created from obscure things like darkness and dark magic. The personification of the opponent is what makes it more serious, what makes it feel more serious. The main villains of the first season are the Tricks. I think Tricks are really fun. They have great outfits, an interesting dynamic between them, and a well-developed roster of spells and attacks. They go from standard mean girls or bullies that are adored and feared by their peers to being power-hungry descendants of the original 3 witches that destroyed a whole realm in pursuit of power. It seems like a quick jump, but in fairness, they were looking for power from the get-go, originally going for Stella's Ring of Solaria before they discovered Bloom's power. They are extremely effective as villains, although they don't have a fleshed out reason for their actions. Darkar, on the other hand, is a boring villain. He has an interesting design, and I like that he created Avalon, who was creepily abusing his power as a teacher and grooming Bloom to be overtaken by dark magic. This plotline could have been a great story for a more brutal life adaptation, by the way. There's so much in this show that could work so easily for an adult live action remake. It's insane. Now, Valtor brought something really interesting with him in season 3, which is manipulation and exploitation of already existing dynamics between people. The way that he slithered his way through the realms, giving some characters what they want in exchange for access to magic sources was great. He reminds me of the devil, out and about looking for a good deal to buy a soul and gain some magic. Valtor is theatrical and charming, cruel in interesting ways. He literally blinds Aisha to send a message. That's a bit fucked up for a kids show. His dynamic with the tricks was really fun to watch too.
You're just saying that because you want him for yourself.
This is getting more and more interesting.
He was manipulating the hell out of them, using the fact that they were crushing on him against them. Until, of course, he changes into his true form and isn't a hot goth guy anymore.
Well, let's...
Whoa, did you two see that? Ugly!
Yeah, and to think I had a crush on him. We keep hooking up with losers.
He also makes well-respected figures of authority for Gonda, Griffin, and Saladin fight each other while being tricked to think that they're fighting him. And in front of everyone, because he also decided to live stream it. He's such a little bitch. I love it. Basically, the writing is interesting in this show and could be easily adapted into an adult live action. There is a lot of content that can be used if you just remove the censoring that was going on in the original show. It's a fun story with a fun cast. It's good. This time, in part 1, when I'm talking about the first season, I'm gonna be quite nice about the styling. Really nice about it, actually. Listen, just prepare yourself for part 2 when I'm gonna be talking about season 5 to 8. Wait, I forgot to turn off the heater. When it comes to fashion and design in this show, it is absolutely top tier. So many looks, so many different designs for different realm, fashion, and objects. It is genuinely fun to see what's on the screen. So let's start with character design. First of all, Winx has a recognizable type of style that is really useful for an ensemble show. Aside the body proportions being not right and not realistic, the show definitely sets a consistent tone for itself, inspiring many fans to participate in their own renditions of these characters. The reason why they also work in other styles too is because of the design being more than just about symbols for their powers. That point once again becomes irrelevant for the later seasons, so we will get back to it. Winx are not dressed in stereotypical, predictable colors that match their powers, which seems like a small and attainable detail, you know, nothing worth even mentioning. However, it is not something that Fate the Winx Saga has managed to do. Even though it's supposed to be a show for young adults and teens, and supposed to offer more to flesh out the characters and be more engaging in general. That's why I'm mentioning it. It's an important factor that creates difference between characters and makes them more real, while still giving them some kind of individuality. Stella doesn't wear much yellow at all, and she gets the most outfit changes out of all the girls, mostly because of the Miss Magic's episode, so it depends on whether you count that episode in or not. If you don't, then I think that she gets about the same amount as everybody else, but maybe one outfit more because she had a separate date outfit in season 1. Flora wears a lot of pink and she has hoops, golden hoops, and she always sports the most feminine look out of the bunch. Tekna is a futuristic queen. I love what they've done with her design. I'm not even gonna pay attention to Tekna fashion haters, okay? Because she brought so much to the table and I love her looks. I love the amount of purple and neon green she got. Aisha is sporty but she's still feminine. Her outfits are genuinely really fun to look at. I also love that her powers are pink instead of blue because she's not a fairy of water. She's a fairy of waves and liquids and stuff like that, the movement of liquids. And Morphix is a very unique type of power. I really enjoy that. Bloom is basically wearing blue all the time with like yellow sometimes, breaking things apart, which again, it's not a typical choice. Need I remind you of Fate's version of Bloom that wears tons of red? Because apparently the creators haven't heard of color theory or the fact that you have to work with colors in the visual mediums like film. Anyway, Musa wears a lot of red and blue, while being more of a tomboy than the other girls. Of course, Aisha and Tekna are a little bit more tomboyish than everybody else, but I'd say that Musa is probably the most tomboyish one in season 1 before she changes her everyday outfit. Basically, what I'm trying to say is that Winx wasn't relying on typical color combinations or color choices or just simple symbols to differentiate them. One of the examples I want to look at is their gowns in season 1. Unfortunately, in season 1 we didn't have Aisha, so obviously I'm not gonna have a gown for her for this section. But don't worry, she's gonna come back soon. I love these gowns. I do. I think they illustrate each one of the girls' personalities while also kind of showing you what realm they're coming from. You can see that the girls are influenced by what is fashionable in their home worlds. It's extremely clear by looking at Bloom, because we know what people wear on Earth, and how her outfit is more of a simple type of approach instead of what everybody else is wearing. I love the pantsuit that Musa is wearing. With this interesting headpiece that makes it feel a bit more festive, with a Hanfu inspired sleeves and waistline, as well as this headband that she's wearing that looks like a pair of headphones as she usually wears, especially in her transformation. Flora's dress is again the most feminine one out of the bunch, with dark green accents looking like vines, acting as straps for the rest of the dress. Tekna got this futuristic version of a kokoshnik. Let me show you what a kokoshnik is. One of these things. It looks similar to that, doesn't it? I think it's such a unique way to create this gown that is so futuristic and feels like it comes from a realm with all the futuristic things. It's just great. Look at this. Look at this. Fantastic. And it still feels like a futuristic gown even 18 years later, because this gown was designed like 18, 19 years ago. Stella is wearing a dress with cutouts that only Stella would wear to a school formal. And it reminds you of Solaria as well, of their fashion. We haven't seen Solaria by this point in the show, but when you see the fashion that is definitively Solarian, you will definitely see the influences and how they kind of have a similar vibe. So next we're getting this party outfits. Stella going with all monochromatic with yellow everything. I think this is one of the few times when she's wearing yellow, and I think that this dress is really fun, and I just love that everything is the same shade. Monochromatic looks, they really hit different, especially when they're all the same color, and if it's not black, because black is just not that impressive to get all black things that match. I know that there's different types of blacks, but there's just a lot more options than, for example, this really light yellow, you know, Musa, and those thigh-high boots. I absolutely love those thigh-high boots so much, so much. It's sickening. And Tekna just doing the most. Just look at this outfit. I love it though. Aisha's dress, just look at it, just look at it. The cut, fantastic. That skirt, fabulous. The arm accessory, to die for. I miss arm accessories so much. Actually, I don't think that they were ever that readily available, especially pretty ones. Usually ugly ones are literally everywhere, but something that is matching your outfit and has like, I don't know, just arm accessories in general are so great, and I think there should be more of them available for us. Flora is wearing something feminine once again. This time this color palette is quite unique for her. I don't think that she wears that much green outside of this outfit. There was also another outfit of like coming back to school where she wears some green, but most of the time her outfits are in the pink realm. So having this outfit where she is wearing something green and blue instead of pink is really interesting, and like a little bit of an interesting color swap. Looks fantastic on her. Bloom is in this seafoam green or like bluish greenish kind of color, which is a little bit more green than she usually goes for, and I love it. Such an interesting cut. It's just only Bloom and Stella and Tekna wear outrageous cuts like this. Season 3 gowns? Oh my god. Season 3 gowns should go down in history as the best gowns created. I mean, come on. Look at this Musa dress. Just look at it. This is gorgeous. Those accessories and the color of this dress mixed in with this pink bodice turned into a cape kind of thing, like high-low situation that looks fantastic. It's so sparkly and beautiful. It's also accentuated with a waist piece that, just like her season 1 formal outfit, reminds you of Hito Obi of some sort, which is like a Japanese belt. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right, but that's what I think it's pronounced like, Hito Obi. Of course it's not exact, it's just inspired by it. And that purse, I just love everything. Stella's dress is also gorgeous. I like it a lot better than the one that she was gonna go with at first. That outfit ended up being Shamara's outfit. Let me show you what it looked like if you don't remember. This is the dress that Stella wanted to go with initially, and it's interesting, but I do think that this one is better. Let me know if you don't think so if you kind of feel like the other one is better. I love the way the top of the dress is constructed. It has a unique draping of the materials, with one arm exposed and the other one covered by a voluminous sleeve. The bottom of the dress has a beautiful gradient going on, with tons of jewels hanging off of the skirt. Bloom in her baby doll dress, it suits her so much. The pink in this outfit is not overpowering, so it still works for her. I really don't like when they go overboard with pink for Bloom, but I think that in this case it actually is a good choice. Aisha's dress, God, I love it so much. I wish I had it. I wish I had this dress. It reminds me of the 90s sleekness with a bit of the old glamour. The variety in these gowns is just astonishing. I love it. This purple is really great for Aisha. It really works for her. That green shawl matches really well with the shoes and a little bit with the, like the top band. Tekna's outfit looks like it was inspired by Flora's home planet, with green and pink taking the center stage, and her outfit actually including some flowy organic lines in the skirt and the ruffled top. She's also wearing a headpiece that's a little bit reminiscent of a flower. It isn't a flower, but it's a little bit reminiscent just because it's green and the way that it's ruffled. Her dress still features some futuristic aspects, like the waist corset looking thing that reminds you of her usual outfits in the way that it's constructed. And finally, Flora. Flora's outfit is probably the most faithful to her first formal outfit, and also her Magic Winx attire. She's wearing a long pink dress with gems and tons of flowers. Also, both Tekna and Flora have pearl necklaces on for this. Basically, Winx have so many great fashion moments that talking about them all, it's literally a video in itself. A couple of my favorite moments in lightning round: disco outfits, camping outfits, raincoat looks, and pajama outfits. They're with heels. Let's talk transformations design. This is arguably the best part of the show. Magic Winx and Enchantix are great transformations that make so much sense and build up the lore perfectly. And if you want to see those transformations done in real life, I'm gonna direct you to one of my previous videos where I try to recreate their looks in real life by styling them. Let's start with Magic Winx. When I tell you I love transformations in this show, I mean it. A part of it is of course nostalgia, but now as an adult with a degree in art, I can appreciate it for what it is outside of nostalgia, which is great design. Each one of the girls have a unique outfit, they don't repeat at all, but at the same time they have some criteria that make them look like they are on the same level of powers, or that it is the same transformation. The wings are the same size even though they're all different in terms of design. All of the outfits are sparkly, they look like a Versace collection come to life. Even the boots look like Versace boots. It's basically a group of models showing off the latest collection. The fun part about it is that all fairies get this form, and we see a bunch of outfits that look like Magic Winx, where we don't even have to be told that it's Magic Winx. We can kind of guess just because it follows the criteria. We get to see great designs even for background characters too, including Galatea, the Princess of Melody, Muse's home planet, and this background character Frances, who is a fairy of laughter that is basically just like a Harley Quinn or something. That's the power of a good design. Anyone can come up with their own version with a new outfit that would work as a Magic Winx look. It's more versatile than just a uniform type of look, but it still has a criteria that makes it what it is. Now, Enchantix, I told you it's absolutely fantastic in the art direction part, and I absolutely meant it. It is so top tier in terms of design, I cannot believe that the same show gave us so many different looks. Enchantix is recognizable, no matter who has it, no matter who's doing a new design. The same as Magic Winx, it has a criteria that makes it attainable in other designs, and that's what makes it absolutely iconic. All Enchantix looks feature beautiful sparkly opera gloves, a pair of big wings that have crystals or gems hanging off them, barefoot sandals, tiara of some sort, and a fairy dust bottle. What is so great about this criteria is the fact that it does not dictate too much to the point where the individual designs would become the same thing, like a uniform or some sort of simple recolor to differentiate it between the fairies. It actually creates a recognizable style that's easy to adopt. Let's cover some of the girls, starting with Flora. You cannot tell me that you weren't absolutely flabbergasted by Flora's wings and long hair when you first saw this transformation as a kid. There is literally no way to look at her transformation and not be blown away. That pink baby doll dress, those sparkly gloves, the buns on her head, and those crystals on her wings that match the crystals on her sandals. Come on now. The way she earned her Enchantix is absolutely great. She literally died for it. Also for the Enchantix, I'm gonna show this artist Iridescent Tides. I'm gonna link them in the description. Go follow them because their style is so great. They basically redraw or repaint in their own style all of the Enchantix looks or all of the other looks that they want to from Winx, and their style is just so gorgeous. Just look at Flora. This is insane. I love it so much. Go follow them. I'm gonna keep showing you the versions of that artist of the Enchantix looks because I just love it so much. It's like my favorite thing to look at ever. Bloom is also sporting a baby doll dress. This time it's a tier dress. It has a beautiful gradient going on. Just look at how it changes from blue at the top to green to a little bit of pink, then yellow, and then finally the final level pink. The top seems to have a halter cut with a small collar accentuated by a pink bow. This hairstyle suits her so well too. It's such a good change, such an exciting change because it was such a big difference from her usual hairstyle. It's such a great outfit for her. Blue is a great color for Bloom. Since all of her attacks are orange, red, or whatever, like they use warm tones, they would swallow her up if her color of her outfits were also too warm. Here's Iridescent Tides version of Bloom. This is just gorgeous. Aisha's Enchantix changes during 3rd season. The color scheme changes slightly. I am not quite sure as to why. I think I like the blue accents a little bit more. I think it breaks it up a little bit more. I don't think the outfit suffers from that change, but I do like a little bit more contrast. The outfit is immaculate, and it's also the first Enchantix we see in the series because she's the first one to get it. Also, Aisha has gems in the inner corners of her eyes. They are part of this great makeup look with this greenish yellow eyeshadow and this light pink lipstick. Euphoria who? Euphoria who? Winx did it first and arguably better. Her hair, it's a different color from her civilian outfit, and the braids look really cool with the pigtail of like half up, half down. Fantastic. Let me show you Iridescent Tides version of this because oh my god, come on. So gorgeous. Technic gets this blend of traditional fairy motifs mixed with futuristic lines that create this great outfit that I personally like a lot. It's interesting to see that she gets longer hair too. I kind of wish it was even longer for Enchantix, I don't know why. To me, the details of her outfit look like aircraft detailing put apart and petals. I don't know if you're seeing what I'm seeing. But anyway, the Iridescent Tides version has long hair, like really long hair, and I absolutely adore it. Look at this. Just looks gorgeous. I cannot. Okay, now Stella. Stella's Enchantix is for the history books. I don't make the rules. This outfit is full of warm tones, and what I like most about Winx designs is that they also always feature accent colors that work really well with the designs. Stella gets a bit of blue and pink to make her yellow and orange tones really stand out. The blue that's used in her wings, tiara, choker, and top adds just enough to make this outfit come together. It's not the first color you think of when you try to recall Enchantix of Stella, but it is integral to the other aspects of this outfit to make it as effective as it is. Her makeup and hair on point too. Iridescent Tides version. With Musa, we get this interesting look with minstrel shorts. I'm not kidding. One of those old-timey pairs of shorts, and they look fantastic, by the way. Her Enchantix features a lot of new colors for Musa. Her Magic Winx outfit was basically all red with like a touch of purple. So seeing her with massive yellow wings with like a purple trim is really interesting. However, even though this outfit features so many colors, it still weirdly feels red when you try to recall it from your childhood memory. And that is the beauty of color theory and using the colors right. This outfit feels like a great continuation or evolution of Musa's previous outfit, even though they are different because your eyes are guided to the red parts of the outfit. Also, the pinks that we get, they lean towards red quite heavily, so that kind of contributes to the effect. Again, Iridescent Tides, Musa. Fantastic. I also want to touch on the fairy dust bottles design and mention the animation sequences that came with the use of them in the show. I love that each one of them got a unique design for those bottles. It seems like no big deal, but the amount of repetitive design in animation with just recoloring counting as a different variation or object is insane. So when I see that the details have been taken care of, I mention it because that's how it should be done. The designs of the bottles are interesting, but where like most that they also have the activation animation that's also unique. I want to mention Stella's animation for using the fairy dust. I think that the way she guides the bottle with her finger as she's calling it over, it's really great for her character. And this sequence shows that every little opportunity should be used to individualize the characters and to show off their personality. It's a spell that's going to be used only a few times, and still, the animation shows off a lot of the character's personality. The looks are literally endless, and they're all so good. The design section of this video is basically just a massive pro. Even though we get a lot of fun, colorful looks, we also get a ton of gothic, punkish, and alternative in general looks in the form of witches. Tricks are included in this section because they have outfits that are classic witch outfits. Icy, Darcy, and Stormy are great antagonists in terms of their outfits. Their casual looks as well as their witch attires look fantastic. The design of those three is genuinely top tier, it's so good. All of the other witches get interesting alternative looks as well. All of them have dark, exaggerated makeup and leathery looking outfits. If you're looking for some inspo to dress in like an alternative type of fashion, look no further than Winx because they have tons of looks you can pull from. There's also this scene where Stella says that she would never wear witch-like clothes, and they show 3 snapshots of what that would look like, and I think that scene perfectly encapsulates what witches in this show look like and how much of a difference there is between their style and the fairy style. Even though there's something unifying about those designs, like if I see it I would be immediately clued in that this is a Winx style of clothing. Regardless of what camp you belong to, you can find something to be inspired by. It's really fun. There's also a bunch of background characters that have great design. I took a few screenshots of people from Magix and some people from Solaria and Andros, as well as Lynphea, and you can just see the variety. You can even guess just by looking at people what realm they came from, if you've seen the style once before. I love how design informs world building in this show. It's really great work. Obviously these things are expected from any show that features multiple worlds, but you'd be surprised how often those worlds lack some kind of cohesive identity in terms of aesthetics. The fact that there are so many worlds that look interesting and beautiful in this universe is another reason why I don't like the Netflix adaptation. They could have done so much with it, and they just decided to corner this live-action Winx market with their lazy, half-assed product. It's a shame because no one can enter that market again. We can't just make another show immediately while the second season of Netflix adaptation is happening. It's just a shame, honestly. Another pro. Monsters. Just like any other show, Winx has a catalog of monsters to offer, but there's definitely some standouts that I want to talk about. First of all, the Army of Darkness in season 1 is really something. I've mentioned this multiple times in this video. There are a ton of similar monsters that Darkar conjures up in season 2, but I think that the monsters from season 1 are in their own league. Usually I don't remember specific monsters, especially from shows that I watched as a child, but I remember these gross creatures. Mostly because all the bigger variations of them were made out of these worm creatures that were like the base element of the monsters, and they were indestructible and would just morph back together with this gross sound. The sound design for these bastards was great. It fits all the monsters quite well, and they just have this right amount of grossness to them, you know? Like one of them has this snake or worm-like tongues coming out of their mouth, and the biggest bitch of them all has no head, and it just looks wrong in the best way possible. The fact that they fall apart into a million little worms when destroyed makes you feel grossed out, especially with the sound. Another creature that really stands out is the Nightmare Gargoyle from season 1. That thing looks so gross on its own, but the way it's hanging over the girls... Ew! Another creature that I found super amusing was the hunting troll. I remember this creature from way back when I first watched the show, but what I was surprised to see and found so fun was the nipple piercings that the trolls have.
6-inch pumps.
Oh, this is good. I love it when there are things like that in the shows that you watched as a kid that you rediscover as an adult, just because you weren't paying attention before. And the logistics of that amuse me too. Like, who pierces their nipples? Is there like a ceremony for baby trolls when they do that? Or are they born with little rings that magically grow as they grow and their breasts grow, chests grow? Just so many questions and no answers. And you know what? Sometimes sometimes I think not knowing is part of the fun. Basically, the monsters are fun in this show. I love them. Now, let's talk about pixies. I'm a bit conflicted about them, to be honest, because on one hand I like their design, I like the variety, the fact that each one of them have a source of powers, just like fairies, and that they're not in predictable pairings with the bonded fairies either. Like Chara is a pixie of gossip, and she has something similar with Stella, so you would assume that they would be bonded, but they're not. She's bonded with Flora. The only pixie that has a lot of direct correlation in terms of powers or personality is Digit, Technus pixie. I like that it's not the same pixie design, just recolored to make them different. They actually are different. So their individualization and the way that they were introduced, it's not a cop-out, so I kind of like that. However, I find them a little annoying. As a kid, I found them insufferable. Now, as an adult, I kind of have a bit more appreciation for them just because of the design and the lore. I think that the way that they were introduced wasn't boring and like it made a lot of sense. It was fun, so I kind of have more appreciation for them now. But I'm gonna tell you that when I was a kid, I couldn't stand them. I couldn't. I think it might be because of their high-pitched voices. I'm not sure. And I think they work better when they are not overused. When there's episodes that are way too pixie-centric, or there was this episode where pixies were telling the story of what happened and it was just focusing on them way too much, on them and the magic pets. It just doesn't work that well, because I think that I can tell you for sure that as a child I couldn't stand it. Honestly, as an adult, that episode also really was trying to watch it. It's really difficult to finish it. I'd say that limiting the amount of scenes with them and just having less of that high-pitched voice and tuta patuta happening, it just helps a little, to be honest, to make it a little bit more, I don't know, intriguing. I guess you just start having more appreciation for them when they're not overused. But the most important part about them is that their design is unique, it's individual to each one of the pixies, and it's an important part for me to highlight in this video with each time the design was done properly, because in the future video I'm gonna be ranting so much that I just want you to remember that there was a reason why so many people like this show, and there is a reason why so many people are pissed about the future seasons, like the seasons 5 through 8. Just keep that in mind. Specialist equipment. The specialists have so many gadgets and equipment that they're working with, but I want to mention some of them because they're great. Starting with Fantablades. Fantablades are basically like futuristic swords, similar to lightsabers as well. Lightsabers from Star Wars, if you're not familiar. I wanted to start with them because they're one of those things that I did not pay attention to as a child, but now I've grown to appreciate them because of the creative design that went into it. Most specialists have like a favorite type of weapon that they use. It usually uses the same material as Fantablades, or like, you know, like same material as lightsabery kind of things, except there's a lot more variety. It's not just swords. Like Helia has a gauntlet, but it has the same laser type of material as the Fantablades that make up the, you know, the strings that come out of his glove. Riven uses laser bolas. I think that's what it's pronounced like. This is what the word is. It's like a throwing ball weapon. There are so many different weapon designs. I just kept on taking screenshots just to show you the sheer variety. One of the coolest Fantablade is this dark blue one that Colotorda has, and it's because it has 3 rings on one of the sides. Let me show you. Let me zoom in and show you. So the sword has a piercing. It's just, I don't know, something about it seemed so cool to me, so I decided to show it. He also uses a Fantablade whip, which is fun as well. And this one that one of the guys has, Wolverine type of things. It's kind of cool. Specialists also have 3 types of aircrafts. The biggest one named Hawk, another one that the Winx usually get to use, which is called an Owl, and another one named Crow, which is basically like a single seat interceptor. I like that there's a system of aircrafts that all fit together and have specific use. Great planning and object design from both writing and visual perspectives. Oh, and wind riders, of course, for short distance travel. They're a fun addition as well, specifically because they come in handy so many times and they work well with the 3D animation style. Let's talk about specialists' casual outfits, and by specialist I mean Naboo as well, because almost everyone is from Red Fountain, like, come on, give me a break. I really like a lot of their outfits before they go to Earth in season 4. I mostly like them because they're a bit different than what you would expect. Sky's outfits are a bit futuristic, but also casual. I like the matching set he wears. I especially like the green detailing around the knees. I think that makes the outfit come together a little bit more and makes it a little bit more unique. It also makes it look like it belongs in the magical dimension. Sky's outfits have nice silhouettes, but they're nothing fancy, except for when he's wearing his royal attire. I find it interesting that neither Sky nor Brandon look like they're from Heraklion, at least most of the time. I'm just making assumptions here based on like the people that we've seen in the Heraklion episodes, and for example, Diaspora's casual attire. This disco outfit that Sky wears in season 3, sorry for the image quality, it's probably the closest to what I would imagine casual Heraklion clothes to look like. Brandon, his outfits are probably my favorite out of all the guys. Are you surprised? Don't particularly like this season 1 outfit because I don't think it suits his personality very well. These 2 outfits that he wears in season 3, however, they're great. I like that there's a matching set theme going on with his outfits and Sky's outfits. It makes me feel like the Magic Dimension has some kind of fashion trends going on. These 2 outfits definitely fit him more, and I'm always here for a good crop top. He's also got a disco outfit. I'm sorry for the quality again. It's quite interesting. I like the pattern on his pants, but it's kind of fun. Riven's got a bit of a punk thing going on. He's always wearing sleeveless tops, showing off, I guess. Look at this screenshot. The proportions. Just look at these arms. They're just too big. Just too big. They look like sausages. I also don't get what a Union Jack is doing on his shirt. People from Magix don't seem to know much about Earth, let alone know about the UK. I wonder why they made that decision to put it there, but it is there. His disco outfit is quite a bit of a change with the flowy burgundy shirt and like this little scarf thing. It's a good outfit in my opinion. Now Naboo. I really like Naboo's outfits. His casual outfit makes him stand out in a good way. It's an interesting style and cut for a casual look. His disco look is great too. This shirt has a nice flow, and I also like that he changes his hairstyle. I think Healy is also one of my favorites. He dresses a bit like a stereotypical poet/pacifist, which that's exactly what he is. The earthy tones really work well for him. His disco outfit is probably one of the best out of the guys, just with this sweater on top, this asymmetric thing going on. It's a really interesting look. Timmy is dressed a bit like a nerd, and it's kind of cute. I like that he has this style. He goes from looking a bit like a nerdy gamer boy to looking like he's going to a high school theater party, like play after party, with his disco outfit. It's funny, it's cute. Schools designs. We get to see 3 schools in the first 3 seasons of the Winx: Alfea, Cloud Tower, and Red Fountain. I think all 3 of them have great designs, and I love how different they are from each other. Alfea has this pink and blue color palette that's really rare for a fantasy type of school. I like the dining hall at Alfea. The main library has a podium that looks like a butterfly. The magic archive has this floating podiums, as well as this little living room for the pixie that is the pixie of that library or archive, which I find really cute. I also want to mention the gates of Alfea because they're shaped like wings and they open in a very interesting way. And of course, the best part, the dorms. Winx's apartment at Alfea is dream come true. I love the layout of it, the color palette, the fact that they have this little living room with a fireplace and a balcony. Am I the only one who's obsessed with it? The doors to each one of the rooms reference who lives inside of it with the mosaic that's on the doors. This one is for Musa and Tekna's room. This one is for Bloom and Flora. And this one with the suns is for Stella. My favorite room is definitely Stella's. It might be because it's the biggest one with the 2nd floor. And it might be because she's the only one who got a whole room to herself. I don't know how she got to have it. Maybe it's because she's a princess or her dad paid for it. But Stella definitely gets a great deal. I also love the candles that are situated around her bed. However, it's definitely a fire hazard, especially with the bed hangings around. Bloom and Flora's room is really cute, with Flora's half of the room being elevated on the podium and separated from Bloom's half by like a bookcase. Tekna and Musa's room has this futuristic feel to it thanks to Tekna. I love that there's processors that are just dividing the room, and the fact that Musa's bed looks like the top of a grand piano. Aisha gets a separate room when she's added to the cast, and I like the ballet shoes on the wall. It just reminds you of her love for dancing. Basically, I wish college dorm rooms looked like that. It looks cozy, it looks beautiful. It's everything that you would want. It's fun. Now, let's talk about the Cloud Tower. I really like the design of this school. I love the witch's dining room. It looks massive, and the fact that you can just fall down is so weird and just so perfect for a witch's school. They have a little dungeon in the school, because why not? And I also like these rooms with the statues that come to life when someone who has control over the tower asks to be protected. The fact that Cloud Tower is alive is a fantastic idea. This is genuinely the best part about the structure of this institution. Now, Red Fountain gets 2 designs. In season 1, the school looked like a classic idea of a castle with a coliseum. It gets destroyed at the end of the season, and season 2 offers a redesign. I love that they decided to have this celebration where the old castle got completely destroyed and replaced by this futuristic levitating tower that is like a literal fountain. I like the redesign a lot better. I think it's more interesting, it fits the specialists a bit better, and it offers a suitable backdrop for all of the action that is going to happen there. Did we cover everything? I think we've covered quite a bit of things. If you want more Winx fashion content, there's a couple of videos that I'm gonna link because I've done it before because I'm obsessed. I think this section demonstrates well enough that the design of this show is probably my favorite thing about it. The fashion is genuinely great and diverse. There's so much you can pull from it to get inspiration. It's so fun. I love it. Okay, so this part of the video would have been a lot longer if world building was the first one that I introduced in this video, because world building encompasses so many things. So this section is a bit short. I'm a bit sad about that because these Musa buns are kind of doing it for me right now. But in any case, world building. The Winx world feels lived in and vast, ready to be explored by the characters and the audience. The most important part about this world is its placement outside of Earth, which gives room to multiple realms we get to see in this show to take center stage. All of the Winx came from a bunch of dimensions that are all very, very different. One of the subtle ways of making this world feel real is the insertion of other characters at Althea that come from the same realm as one of the Winx. It seems like a small detail, and it is, but having the Princess of Melody, which is Musa's realm, and Stella's acquaintance Nova from Solaria, it makes it feel like these places exist even when Winx are not there, even when the main characters have nothing to do with those places. These characters have a personality, and also they have something to do on screen and off. Basically, it's important to insert characters like that to make it feel a little bit more grounded. Every realm we get to see feels like a real place with history, even if you don't get to hear much of it. Visual aspects of this world really help to support this feeling. However, due to all the realms we see being idealized view of the monarchies, we don't really get much of an explanation to how they function politically. And honestly, I'm mentioning this just because I have a feeling that Heraklion is a type of place that a lot of us wouldn't like unless we were related to the royal court. Let me know if you find Heraklion a little bit dodgy too. Of course, it's expected that a show that targets ages from 9 to 14 wouldn't actually dive into any political issues, and they shouldn't. It's not really that important or anything like that. They mention things here and there that just give enough of context to kind of feel like the world is lived in. So I'm not gonna dock points for that. There's things like, for example, Sky's parents being really against Bloom even after they find out that she's a princess. They're acting like she isn't a princess. It's a little bit confusing. I don't really understand why. And not just any place, it's Princess of Domino, which is a really major place in the magical universe, pretty prosperous place too when it gets revived, so it makes it makes very little sense that they are so against her, they don't like her. I guess in the first season it would make more sense, but after that I don't quite understand why that's the case. Yeah, Domino was destroyed, but the level of disrespect is weird. Just like I said earlier in the review, it is really weird that Domino seems to be erased from everyone's memories for 3 seasons, and most of the issues in the world building as I said, in the writing part, is about the timeline issue. It's very confusing, and I don't know why it was created that way, because there are ways of fixing it easily, right? So I don't know why it was left to just stay the same, unexplained kind of plot hole. Somehow this show manages to still make the world feel full and alive, even with some inconsistencies like that, which is really interesting. Part of world building is logic and consistency in the lore. The first 3 seasons deliver on that when it comes to a lot of things, except for Domino, and a few details here and there that are not that important. The clearest example of that is the path of becoming a guardian fairy. This system was introduced later in the seasons, in season 3, when Winx and the rest of the girls at Althea, who are third years, find out about enchantix. But we also know that power-ups and new transformations are possible because of Charmix. And we find out about Charmix in season 2. The criteria how to get enchantix and Charmix is clear, and the best part about the earlier seasons is that those power-ups fit into the lore of the world really well, and they also make a lot of sense in the story and for the development of the characters. None of them get the same story of how they achieve a power-up, which is really important because it actually shows that there is a difference between all of them, and I'm going to highlight that so many times in this video. But it's just really important to have this individualization. When you have a cast of 6 girls that are the same age, it's really important to just keep on individualizing them and keep fleshing their characters out. They all get a separate storyline for Charmix, and Charmix is just a power-up. It's not even a full transformation. Remember that for part 2 when I'm going to be ranting about the rest of the seasons. Let's look at the worlds and sometimes aspects of the worlds that I found most compelling. One of the standouts in terms of how it functions is the Cloud Tower. I have mentioned it in the design section, but I genuinely think that it's one of the most interesting buildings in the entire Winx universe. I think it adds a lot to Witch's lore, the fact that the tower is alive and able to adjust and restructure itself. In one of the episodes we find out that it has an actual heart. It's kind of like a combination of a plant and an animal kind of being. We see that witches meditate to get control over things around them, like Griffin meditating to get control of the Cloud Tower again, and it kind of makes this distinction between what fairies do and what witches do and how they channel their powers. The tower can literally move, flop around when it's upset. It's really interesting. Another standout in my opinion is the Fortress of Light, where the tricks are kept after failing to take over the entirety of the world in season 1. The fortress is situated in its own dimension, where a bunch of Templars, knights, and monks are trying to teach prisoners how to be better and seek redemption. It's fun to see how much of a terrible punishment it is for the tricks. It seems like a chill place that like it wouldn't be that bad to be there, but the tricks are suffering so much and everything just pisses them off. It's really fun to watch. They hate being around goody two-shoes people, especially people who are literal monks. One of my all-time favorites is also the Omega Dimension. Yeah, it's just a frozen world, but I really like the subplot with Tecna that expands on the Omega Dimension and shows that because of prisoners getting out of their ice block cells, there's like a whole Wild West thing going on where there's different camps of opposing teams of prisoners. Some of them are in charge, some of them are on top of the power pyramid, and they just wreak havoc everywhere. It's just another plot line that would be perfect for a live adaptation. It would be really interesting to see how Tecna survived there and what she's done and how this power dynamics were affecting her while she was waiting to be rescued and thought that she wouldn't be rescued. There are some problems with the Omega Dimension though, in terms of the lore and in terms of how it was written. It's supposed to be so cold that you can't just fly down and park there. It's a whole planet. It's really cold. They've shown before in the first episode of the 3rd season that getting too close to it would just freeze your ship and you would just fall down, or the ship would stop functioning. So when the tricks were dropped off there, they were literally just dropped off from outside of the planet's ozone layer. Basically, they did not land to drop them off. But then it's suddenly not an issue anymore when they go to look for Tecna. Maybe it has to do something with the portal being open, maybe it has changed the temperature. But then why would they all give up so easily on looking for Tekna, if it is possible to enter the Omega Dimension some other way instead of just going through the portal that's in the oceans of Andros. I don't get it, and explaining it would require so much mental gymnastics that the audiences shouldn't be doing. It should be done for them. You should just tell them how it functions. You shouldn't be expecting them to just jump through hoops to try and explain plot holes in world building. Like literally all of them just gave up except for Timmy, and in this case, if it's possible to enter the dimension, I don't understand why they would just give up so easily. Yeah, it's hard to find her, but it's not impossible, especially with magic, right? Come on now. Now, on to another world related to Omega Dimension, which is Andros. I really like the way Andros is set up as an above water kingdom and an underwater queendom. Andros has a unique aesthetic and has this connection to the Omega Dimension as the only world that's connected to it through a portal that's guarded by mermaids. I like that the mermaids of Andros have wings. I like that a lot of them are warriors and guards and have an interesting queen and princess, especially in terms of design. I also loved their interdimensional ships. It's the one on the screen right now. Because instead of looking just super futuristic in the same way as many other aircrafts look in this universe, it looks like an old-timey frigate pirate ships. Another world I'd like to mention is Downland. I like that it's surrounded by crystals that some sponsors believe to have the ability to predict the future of people of Downland. The fact that they have their own fashion that Brandon and Sky have to adhere to later in season 2 when they come back to ask for a favor from Queen Amencia. Honestly, that whole point of Downland being a queendom and them asking Sky and Brandon and other men to prove themselves while giving Aisha a break and some tea is really funny.
Would you like some hot tea?
I like how many unique aspects there are about Downland, including the weird sculptures of every queen and king of Downland, with a bust prepared for a new king, when Amencia tells Brandon that she can still marry him even though he is an Uplander, because the queen or a princess can choose whomever to marry. And at the moment when she says that she can choose whoever she wants to marry, they show all the busts, and one of the busts is a literal horse. You guys... Someone married a horse in Downland, and it's just a thing that's mentioned visually, briefly, for like a second there, in the corner of the screen. I swear, this show, Solaria is gorgeous, and I loved when Stella talked to Nova about Solaria and the media there, like their most popular magazines and talk shows. It really fleshes out the world. I also like the universe room, which is on the screen right now, with a bunch of planets just hanging around, and it's just a really impressive type of room that would look gorgeous in like a live action. Linfair is also a great place within the magical universe, being a home of flora. I love that they have this city of trees where technology is banned, and that their method of transportation is just giant leaves that go at a very, very high speed, or giant ladybugs. I like that ladybugs don't go near villages that are made out of sticky leaves because they don't like them. I like the Black Willow with its backstory and its unique power to turn back time. And it's inside of this cave behind a water stairway, which is a waterfall that flows upside down. Anyway, this world is really cute and just very fitting for Flora. It feels like everyone there is a little bit more soft-spoken and sweet as she is. There's also a few worlds we get to see because of Valtor. For example, this world called Apositus, a world where everything that's opposite of each other lives in harmony. We get to see this couple walk out of this institution all happy because they're super different from each other, and Valtor of course ruins it. These I think are my top locations in the magical universe from season 1 to 3. Let's talk about this weird issue that many people bring up when talking about world building in Winx, and that is the gendered nature of the 3 schools, or rather the fact that even though Saladin, the headmaster of Red Fountain, is a wizard, there are no wizards or sorcerers that are male to be seen in magics in the schools, in the 3 schools that we know. Same goes for female specialists and or, male witches, fairies. It becomes clear later on in season 3 when we meet Chimera and we know that she's from a different school called Beta, that there are multiple schools for fairies, witches, and other people. So I think that it is fair to assume that these schools, the Cloud Tower, Red Fountain, and Althea, they just happen to be single-sex schools. I don't think it's impossible to have male fairies in the world, because especially, we're going to talk about it in the future, in the movie that finishes Bloom's story, when Domino goes back to being alive and well again, we see in the background a bunch of guys with wings, so it's kind of explained now, I think, within the universe, that it is possible to go to school and be a male fairy or whatever. It's just not possible at Althea, because Althea only takes girls in. That's my assumption. I was kind of also thinking, like, why was that a thing? Was that another heteronormativity issue? But I think that it's just that those schools happen to be single-sex schools. They're not the only schools. You can go to a different school that's, for example, all-male fairy school or something like that in a different realm. Also, the whole issue between fairies and witches is kind of ambiguous. It's hard to find what definitely differentiates them in terms of why they don't like each other. It makes sense that they have different sources of power. I kind of figured that, but I don't quite understand why they dislike each other so much, and especially how it's even possible they dislike each other, but they always band together when it comes to protecting the magical universe. It's a little bit confusing. I think I wish it was fleshed out a little bit more as to how they're different and why some people become witches and some people become fairies, but whatever. So even though the world building in Winx has some issues, it is unique. More often than not, it is consistent, and it does keep your attention pretty well. Yeah, exactly. The movie. We gotta talk about the movie because this is the way Bloom's origin story ends, which up until this moment, Bloom's story was the main story. It's a 3D full-length film about her kingdom, and since this part is outside of the sections on design, world building, blah blah blah, I'm gonna have to go point by point to talk about this movie, not in terms of what happens, but in terms of just things that I need to say about it. So first and foremost, there has been a huge change in the animation. Obviously, it's a 3D animation. They had to redesign all the characters and decide on a new style and everything. And honestly, a one-off movie is probably the best way to try out a new animation style, because you're gonna piss off the least amount of people possible. If the fans love it, you can use another style and you can animate movies in 3D or do something else. And if the fans hate it, it's not going to ruin the series. No one's gonna be that pressed about it. They're just gonna forget about it like a bad dream. I like some aspects of the animation. It definitely doesn't look as bad as some animations of that time, but I also do have some issues with it. Most of the issues I have, it's usually with the hair. It's really strange because sometimes they nail it, sometimes it looks pretty good, especially for a 3D animation, and sometimes it just looks so horrible that it's jarring. I think the body language is pretty good, especially when it comes to characters like Stella. They kind of went for hyper feminine type of behavior for the girls. I think that it just suits her the most, but I do think that they should have laid off of it a little bit for Musa and Tekna. I don't think that they are the type of characters that would have the same body language as Stella, or even Bloom, to be honest, needed to be a little bit less feminine, because she was just on the same level as Stella, and I feel like Stella's hyper femininity is part of her personality, and I feel like it really isn't part of Bloom's personality, so they could have like dialed it down just a smidge. But I do like the way that they move. There's some kind of fluidity about it. Also, we jump right into action as soon as the movie starts, which I really like, and immediately we get a transformation sequence, which is fantastic. That's how you should do it. That's the most exciting part. I think it was a good idea that they entirely changed the choreography, and they changed the way that the girls are transforming in Enchantix, and also changed the song. The reason being 3D animation. I think that banking on the surroundings is a lot better. Like, for example, they went for special effects kind of heavy transformations with Bloom's dragon. That's a good idea to invest more in that and to give like a different type of transformation of the same Enchantix that we're used to, instead of rehashing it and reanimating it in 3D. We arrive at the biggest issue with the movie pretty much immediately as well. well. That is Hagen and him doubling down on the time plot hole issue of the series. This plot hole is so huge, it's gigantic, and it's really bad that in the movie they decided to specifically have a couple of lines that draw attention to it. This movie is just like 90 minutes or something like that. There's no need to bring attention to things that you didn't fix about the series. I remember that I didn't even pay that much attention to the plot hole of Domino and how it all worked and why Bloom is 18 but everyone aged like hundreds of years and stuff like that. Why sometimes they say that it's been 17 years and sometimes it's been 300 or 500 years. It's just very inconsistent, right? And the thing is, I didn't pay attention to it as much when I was watching the series because it would be mentioned here and there was a lot of other stuff that you could focus on. But with this movie, it's only 90 minutes, so every line counts. Every line is a big chunk of what you're watching, and that's kind of the issue. That I don't know why they allowed this, why no one in the writing room went, what are we gonna do with the plot hole? Like, why are we bringing so much attention to it by bringing Hagen in, having him say things that just further prove that we're incompetent at writing? Didn't anyone feel like that needed to be fixed? The fact that the Company of Light disappeared a long time ago would solve a lot of issues with the plot lines, and at the same time it doesn't explain anything about Bloom. You could explain it by coming up with your own solutions, like, oh, Earth is on a different timeline, let's say it that way, or she was put through a portal and something happened and there was like a lot of time passed or something like that. But it still doesn't quite make sense because you're just coming up with things. You weren't explicitly told that this is the solution to this problem, so I'm not going to be taking it as a solution because I'm not supposed to be solving problems in your story. You should be solving it yourself and seeing problems with it on your own. It's so frustrating that they double down on the storyline instead of fixing it in the movie. Like, yeah, this show is for kids, but kids learn how to count to 100 pretty early on in their lives. Definitely before they turn 12, which is the target demographic of this movie. Okay, so a design side note. I really loved the nails in their movie. I don't know why, but I kept on paying attention to it. I think it's because in the series, the only characters that get to have nails or like long nails are the Tricks. So I was really happy to see nails in this movie for some reason. I don't know why. Okay, so another issue that this movie presents is the fact that Winx graduates just all of a sudden. As I said before, the first season clearly states, I think it's Griselda who says it, that it is a 5-year program. Even if you become an Enchantix fairy, you're still in the program, like you still need to finish your education. Becoming an Enchantix fairy is not like end all be all, you know? The movie kind of makes it impossible for the writers to use Althea as a setting anymore. And the girls are 18, which at this point should have been the most exciting part of writing them in school, because they were going to be kind of like in university for 2 years. They could have gone further with the stuff that they were exploring in season 2, with having a lot of side storylines that developed the characters. But no, not only does this plot point go against the established lore, it's also shortening the longevity of the show by jumping ahead in their lives. The future seasons get so messy because they axe this opportunity of staying in Althea with like a purpose or a reason. And don't get me wrong, I like what they've done with season 4, where they try to go ahead and explore more mature topics, but it would work a lot better if the girls were 20 instead of freshly 18, where they just graduated. It's kind of a little bit rushing it unnecessarily. And I know that the series were originally supposed to be 3 seasons in a movie, which is all great, but at the time where they were making the movie, they already knew that they were not going to be stopping with the series. So I don't understand why they didn't just restructure the movie slightly. It could have been a movie that fixes the plot hole and doesn't present any more new issues, but instead it just kept on presenting new issues for writers in the future. Althea is a great excuse as to why they spend so much time together, and it would also be a really good storyline for about 2 seasons to see them be guardian fairies and learn about being guardian fairies. There could be a lot of adventures involved in that would make a lot of sense. They could explore other worlds the same way as they explored Andros and Stellaria, and mature with the audience. Bloom and Sky are incredibly awkward in this movie. They're not really written like them. A weird approach has been taken with this too, I'm telling you. Something is off and like about both of them in terms of their characters, their personality. All of a sudden, they feel a lot flatter and they feel like perfect protagonists, which basically Mary Sue's. It feels like their previous personalities have been wiped and replaced by whatever lovey-dovey nonsense works for the movie, and this movie alone, not even the entirety of the story. Also, I know that Sky was going through preparations to becoming a king, but he really couldn't send a text or call for months. Like, I think Bloom says that it's been 4 months. 4 months, really? That's insane. And without an explanation, by the way, I just don't get it. It's just such nonsense. Listen, Mike looks rough. I don't know where they got this guy from, but he looks nothing like the regular Mike. This point is here just to feel for him and just to bring justice to his name, you know. Mandragora's insect monsters or whatever are not that fun. They're not bad per se, but they feel like a rehash of Shadow Monsters, which is very season 2, not even season 3. Riven. It was a bad idea to use Riven as the corrupted one again. In the movie, he gets bitten by some of the insects of Mandragora's and he kind of becomes evil or whatever, like he's corrupted by her in one way or another, and I think it's a bad idea. He has so much he has to make up for already, and picking him was predictable, but not in a good way. Things can be predictable in a good way when they make so much sense that there's no way around it. But in this case, he's just a nuisance to the group. And I think by this point in the story, it makes sense to not give him any more flaws or moments that require redemption, because he has done enough. He needs to sit down and calm down and maybe just get rid of him entirely, because he ruins every single thing that they do. Be prepared. The thing is, listen, I'm saying a lot of cons here, but the movie is not bad. It's just there are some cons that I need to get off my chest. One of them being be prepared for a lot of cringe lines. It's not too overbearing, I guess. It might get on your nerves. Mostly, like most of the cringe lines are coming from Bloom and Sky. They are really trying me.
Sky, my sweet prince.
They were really testing my patience, honestly. So just beware of them. And in terms of the writing, it's getting a little bit heavy-handed with stereotypical lines for characters. The two characters that really suffer from this are Stella and Tekna. The amount of lines about malls and styling that Stella gets is overwhelming. And I wish those one-liners were at least funny. Because if you're going to use her for stereotypes, at least make it funny. Tekna is cursed with starting or ending each sentence she says with logically, so we definitely remember that she's the logical one. I always get annoyed when things like that are overused. It reduces the characters to like a really flat version of themselves that are really difficult to relate to or find likable. When Winx are going into their final battle and they're entering the Obsidian, they have to go through somewhat of a test or torture kind of situation, which is them facing their biggest fears. The fears that they run into feel a bit like fears that they're going to be dealing with in seasons 5 through 8, which isn't a good thing. The fears are very surface level and they don't actually overcome them, even though Bloom says that they did. It's like a silly moment that's way too reminiscent of the future seasons. Another Riven point. So Riven, his punch knocks out Mandragora, or is sufficient enough to slow her down. When literally a few minutes ago, we needed all of the Winx to converge their Enchantix powers to hold her off so Faragonda could hit her with a spell. Like, I'm not even kidding. Fuck world building and power consistency, I guess. By the way, Sky is king now. Just remember that for the future. Oh, remember that I talked about male fairies? This is the moment where at the end of this movie you see male fairies in the background, so confirmed. Remember another thing for the future. Remember that Bloom and Sky are now engaged. They're engaged in this movie, okay? This will come up sometime later. Maybe not in this video, but it will come up. Another point is that this movie has really nice sound design. It's just well mixed and placed nicely. Basically, this movie is not bad. It's quite enjoyable, especially for kids. But the plot holes and the sudden character changes that result from poor writing really annoyed me. Let me know what you thought of it as a kid and what you think about it now, as if you've seen it as an adult. I'm curious to hear. Anyway. This is just not as close as I hoped it would be, but me and Aisha, we're basically polar opposites of each other, looks-wise. You are probably wondering, why the hell did I separate the 4th season from the first 3? Usually when people talk about the golden age of Winx Club, they include season 4, which is fair in my opinion. It's not separate because it is somehow worse than the other 3, but because it tried to do something entirely different, with a completely new main storyline. And I want to talk about it all separately because it has little to do with the first 3 seasons, to be honest, in terms of story. So, let's start with the first point. A massive pro in my opinion. And it is the setup of season 4. It is a hard thing to do, following up a series that was originally intended to end after the movie. I personally think that they picked a great storyline to focus on and expand upon. Why is there no magic on Earth? Why did all the fairies disappear from the terrestrial realm? These questions popped up literally in the first episode of the series, when Bloom was discovered on Earth by Stella. Figuring this mystery out and returning magic to Earth is a fantastic setup for a season. I genuinely think they picked the most fruitful and the most logical storyline they could have picked for this new arc. Having fairy hunters as the new villains is a good idea too, as well as having terrestrial fairies as somewhat of an enemy for a part of the season. Warrior fairies plotline is actually genius. Exploring vengeance as a topic is great for a season that tried to tackle more mature topics like graduating into the workforce, pursuing a career, moving out of your parents' house, and adapting to a new city. But the imbalance of mature topics and immature execution is one of the problems that throw this season out of balance. Ideally, I would have recommended the writers to stick with Althea for a couple more years, as I've said before, and then follow it up with a season like this. The reason for it is following your initial demographic, their growth, and gradually grow up with them, allowing the execution of the material to grow up with the audience. The best pieces of media that spawn over multiple years follow this structure because they know that this is the best way to capture new audiences while also keeping the old ones. Season 4 both ventures out into the unknown territory of letting your principal cast grow up, which is great, it's good to take risks, but leaves a lot of loose ends in the lore and development of the world that eventually lead to a lot of entanglements that kind of undermine the impact of this season. A con, first issue that season 4 brings with it, and an issue that gets only worse with the coming seasons, is the issue of Winx losing their power individuality and becoming overpowered in the process. I have mentioned the importance of limiting powers in the writing section, where I spoke about Bloom not being a Mary Sue in the first 3 seasons. Unfortunately, in season 4, Bloom is a Mary Sue. And with the introduction of Believix, we're also introduced to complete erasure of individual powers of the Winx. Believix Tracix wings, which is like another power that you get with Believix, are basically just Flora's powers of being able to know what happened in a place previously. Flora did it by communicating with the plants that live in the area, but now they can kind of watch what happened with just the use of their wings. Yeah, it's different, but it's not different enough, and it makes Flora's ability completely useless. Zoomix, on the other hand, which is another set of wings for Believix, another power that you get, makes Stella's ability to teleport completely useless as well. Now they all can teleport. You just have to wait through a really annoying wing application animation that always starts with Bloom saying, "Come on! Come on!" Stella's light magic that included teleportation? Who needs it? If everyone can do it now, easily. Speedix is just their Enchantix wings, basically. It's just they are completely erasing the powers that Enchantix had just to make Believix seem more powerful.
Was right! These wings can handle even the strongest wind!
And the healing powers? My god. the healing powers. Bloom already had healing powers, but now everyone can heal? Except of course for Naboo, because who needs to heal him, right? It's a bad idea to give everyone the same powers, because all 6 of them are disposable and quite useless now. You just need a certain number of fairies. Doesn't matter who. In the first few seasons, there was a reason why some fairies are better at some tasks than other ones. Now they're all exactly the same. Writers, producers, animators, listen up. Overpowering your protagonist is the worst thing you can do to your own damn self. You will run out of interesting storylines, and after one adventure that will most likely be unconvincing in its delivery, you will virtually tell all the stories imaginable with a certain cast and world that you've built. This is really important, and Winx is a great example as to why you should limit powers and individualize them. Speaking of Believix and Believix powers, another con, the way Believix powers of touching human heart or making them believe in magic works is really inconsistent. It genuinely makes zero sense. Techna says that Believix powers are not enough and people need to have some kind of confidence in them for them to actually believe and for the power to work on them. But then examples of them using those powers and the success rate is extremely random. They definitely didn't think this criteria through well enough. For example, in episode 9, Musa easily makes the pawn shop owner believe in them. Then in the next episode, they keep failing at making people believe in them. People randomly remember Winx using their power on them, the power of touching their heart. And then they randomly don't sometimes, and they're just surprised that they say that they're fairies. It's really confusing. There's no system or rules, just whatever works for the plot, I guess. Another issue that comes from introduction of Believix is the problem of fairy transformation sequence. Yes, Enchantix was supposed to be the last transformation, and yes, it was later changed. I think they kind of had to keep on introducing new transformations because of how exciting they are, even outside of doing it for greedy reasons like making new toys. The issue that I have with the transformation system is not the fact that there are more transformations that are available to achieve, but rather the way that they've been systematized. Believix says the transformation was well set up in terms of its need. What should have been done is the writers should have made Believix an alternative to Enchantix that is needed on Earth, since it's the only form that would work against the Wizards of the Black Circle. Instead, Believix was introduced as a more powerful form, which made it impossible for it to compete and deliver on the hype to compare to Enchantix without overpowering the cast. To allow for new transformations, it's not necessary to create an infinite amount of levels of power, each higher than the previous one. You just have to create the need for the alternatives. Removing of those wing powers, streamlining of the Believix power criteria, and equalization of the intensity between Believix and Enchantix would have solved all the problems while opening new avenues for the transformations. Also, having more time between the major transformations is the way to go, the way it's been done with Magic Winx and Enchantix. Let the designs and the powers shine and make sense in the lore. Another point is season 4 would definitely benefit from a bit more involvement and interconnection with the other realms. The way that season 3 introduced problems that Winx had to solve in other realms, like Stella's problem with Chimera and her dad, it would definitely make season 4 a lot stronger. Because Earth is the place that they are situated in for the entirety of the season, and it makes all the Winx feel very detached from their regular lives, which seems a little bit strange. A few side stories would do wonders. They could just go to like Techna's world or something, make it feel like Techna has a life outside of Winx, you know? A pro, magic and regular locations on Earth. There are a lot of great locations and activities introduced this season to fill out the Earth world with things that they're doing in their free time, or where they're going when they're going on a mission or something. The Fruity Music Bar seems great, with live music and cocktails that just so happen to be non-alcoholic, since it is a kids show. And the Winx girls participate in the music part themselves, giving us the Winx band, which is always exciting as a kid when your favorite cast of people become a band as well. It's wish fulfillment to the max. Love and Pet is a great place for them to work at. It's cute and it gives tons of opportunities for the cute pets to be in the show, while giving Winx an actual job to pay for staying on Earth. By the way, they're not making money selling pets, they're making money selling the supplies for them and then a bunch of things, you know, like grooming them and whatever. Tirnanog is a fairy's queendom that looks gorgeous, and I love the way that you have to use the white circle to enter it, the whole lore around that. Aurora's castle that's like made out of ice that floats in the air is cool too. As well as Diana's Amazonian castle is also a great place for one of the major fairies to reside in. Basically, the series gives a lot of locations and things to do for the characters to kind of make up for the lack of magic dimension in the series. I still think that they would have benefited from having a few storylines of Tecna, Musa, and Flora weaved into the season, but all the new things that they introduced, they were kind of cute and they did work well for it. A con, the Naboo problem. Alright, listen, this one really peeves me. If you don't know, Naboo dies in season 4, and it makes no sense. In season 5, even Daphne, Bloom's ghost sister that was dead for like the entirety of the series, is revived, while Naboo, who got this promise from the Earth fairies,
Will you take care of him?
Until he wakes up again, you have my word.
is somehow impossible to return. Oh, this wording is basically a way to go back. Also, the fact that he dies when Bloom is right there with her healing powers and everyone having healing powers because of Believix 2, they just conveniently forget that too. Basically, even if everything played out the exact same way, there's literally no reason why Naboo should have been kept dead. Especially in a show that suddenly kiddified itself so much in season 5 that it's basically made for toddlers at that point. Why not use the loophole you left for yourself? Explain it to me. Like, what's happening? I don't get it. Also, it makes sense that Aisha wants revenge, okay? When Naboo died. Since when is revenge not allowed in the Winx universe? After Tecna died, there's an episode where the girls literally go to Valtor even though they're not ready to attack him yet. And they go there because they seek revenge, as they should. In Aisha's case, it makes sense that she wants to get Ogeron after he has killed Naboo, like no shit. By the way, the episode in season 3 where they go to avenge Tecna is literally named Fury. Why are we suddenly unable to deal with the wizards? Why are we not allowed to be mad anymore? Okay, let's talk about romantic relationships, since they take up quite a bit of time in this season, while having a lot of characters acting all sorts of out of character. Let's start with Brendan and Stella. What the hell is going on? It's okay for them to have problems, sure, if those problems made sense for them as a couple. The fact that jealousy that gets in the way makes zero sense, to be honest. Like, we're talking about Brandon and Stella here. They literally used to count how many people they can get to fall for them and compete. Now they can't handle Mitzi being annoying. They're just both acting so out of character, it's annoying. Musa and Riven are being annoying, as usual. Also, there's this moment when Riven explains why they're so out of sync, and he says that Musa is changing. She's pursuing things that she wasn't interested in before, and she's changing a lot. And what he's talking about is her pursuing a career in music. New things? Her damn name is Musa. Like, are you kidding me? She's a fairy of music. She's been singing since the beginning of your relationship. She's been playing a bunch of instruments. She said multiple times before that she wants to become a singer. Like, what planet did he fall from to Earth? What the hell? Also, why did Musa only want to break up with Riven when she thought that the producer guy was into her? Like, isn't it enough that you don't like Riven, that you don't vibe with him to break up with him? You don't need a replacement to break up with somebody. Just break up with them. Bloom and Sky are fighting too, but at least with their like hot-headed personalities, I would kind of understand, especially with Bloom always having insecurities about being able to handle things and blah blah blah. They're just not acting like themselves this season, so sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. And just Bloom is so bland all of a sudden that it just doesn't feel the same. The dynamic is so off. Everyone else fighting is basically just them kind of supporting the overall split, the hetero split, the girls versus boys kind of situation, which makes zero sense, but whatever. Also, heteronormativity is so intense that even Kiko finds himself a female bunny to flirt with.
6-inch pumps to get magic back into people's lives.
It's exhausting. Roxy's transformation design doesn't make a lot of sense. It's kind of half Believix, half Magic Winx. It's very confusing as to why this happened. I wish her design was more similar to the other Earth fairies. It would make a lot more sense. And honestly, Earth fairies design, it's just really great. I love their transformation outfits. They're fantastic. Just look at Morgana or Diana. Their outfits are absolutely gorgeous. Nebula's outfit is fantastic too, with a bit more darkness and edge. Kind of reminds me of something I would imagine Stormy to be wearing if she was a fairy. Sibilla and Aurora have great outfits too. I love them. They have something unique to them to compare to Magic Winx and Enchantix. It seems like they're in a league of their own, and it looks gorgeous. A random con: why are there so many moments where Musa is singing and there's no sound of her voice? It happened multiple times and I don't understand why that would happen, especially when they spend way too much time on the singing portion to just not have any audio for her voice. Like, there's instrumentation but no voice. Also, why is Bloom the main vocalist of their band? That just makes no sense at all. Bloom never, did she even care about singing before this? I know that all of them are kind of just given instruments and like we're just led to believe that they know how to play them and they're so talented and whatnot, but main vocalist? However, there is a pro here, which is the music itself. You're the One is a bop. I thought so when I first heard it as a kid, and I still think so to this day. Heart of Stone? That's such a good pop rock song. Like, damn, this girl is worth giving us what needed to be given all the way back in 2009. More great music for kids to grow up with. So the animation, the characters are more angular and they bobble around. The emotions are not as well translated. Just what happened to animation this season? I know it was changed and it's just so jarring. The style is still somewhat the same, but all of a sudden they're so jerky. Oftentimes they look like all of their bones are broken. It happens so often that you genuinely start to get concerned for the Winx bodies and why their bones are broken all over. But damn, that bobbling can really ease off a little bit. Oh, and the chiming. The chimes that they put in the audio every time a fairy flies. It's so frustrating, it's over the top. It's excruciating to listen to. Just tone it down a little and it would be so much better. There are many great outfits this season though. I'm kind of lukewarm on the Belivix outfits, but I am here for Sophix and Lovix. They look great. They're just doing it for me. I don't know why, man. Yeah, I know it's a variation of Belivix, and I don't know why I like them that much more. Don't come for me, Belivix sans, okay? Let's go through my favorite fashion looks in a lightning round. Camping outfits, cowgirl outfits, Mitzi being a fairy outfit, civilian outfits. They're not the best, but I still enjoy them. Rock band outfits. These ones are probably my favorite. I really enjoyed that. And date outfits, which are great too. That Musa dress, that red dress, looks really good on her. And the last point is the timeline. The timeline is messed up again. It's basically the same situation as with Bloom and Domino, except in season 4 with Roxy and Earth. Once again, Roxy's like 16, 17, but it's been apparently centuries since the fairies have been captured. But one of those fairies is her mother, and it's a little bit confusing. I'm sure there's a way to jump through a bunch of hoops and explain it, but again, I don't think the audience is supposed to be doing that. Anyway, that's my overall thoughts on the season 4. I decided to choose one of the looks that I used the least in this video to finish this video off. That was a really fun experience making this. It coincided with my chemo treatment quite a bit. I hope that I managed to keep the energy up in this deep dive anyway. It's nice to look back at the show that you watched as a kid and see it as a piece of media and analyze if it was worth your attention when it demanded it. Was it an interesting piece of media in general for me to engage with? And with Winx, I can safely say that it was definitely worthwhile. It offered a lot to like about it. So it makes sense why it got as big as it did and why it manages to produce new content up to this point, regardless of its current quality. In the future, I will come back with a review of seasons 5 through 8, because that's the deal when you're reviewing the entirety of the series. And the only thing that I can tell you so far is that it's gonna be a bit ranty to compare to this video, to be honest. Well, what can I say? It is what it is. Thank you for watching this video, especially if you watched the entirety of this video. And I will see you next time with another video soon. Bye!